I just quickly ask, so is everyone here today mostly sort of care workers and professionals, or do we have sort of unpaid carers on the platform as well?
It's a mix, I imagine. We've got a palliative care nurse, for example, here with us. This was sent out widely, so I can imagine everybody.
Oh, that's fine. That's
Practice
good.
nurse, pharmacist, wow, GP.
Okay. So I think, as I said earlier, my name is Francis Ngali, and I work with Carers Network, End of Life Carers Project Manager. I think it just what it says, just for the End of Life Carers Project is very much to support carers who are looking after people who are sort of nearing end of life. But today, we are very much talking about dementia, and I will just be sort of hopefully try and generate some conversation. So it's just kind of facilitating the hour. But initially, what I will be doing is to give you, I have prepared some slides to kind of start off that conversation. I will just really, it's just going to be exploring dementia and then kind of focusing on sort of how we support people living with dementia within the BME community. So most of you would know what dementia is, so I'm not going to be taking too much time on it, but I wasn't sure sort of what the audience was going to be like, so I kind of wanted to put a slide in there just to highlight a couple of things about dementia itself. Obviously, it's not a specific disease, but rather a general term used in relation to a sort of impaired ability to remember, think, and make decisions. You may all be able to give me other type of dementia, but the most commonly known are Alzheimer and vascular dementia. But there are a few others, perhaps less common. And dementia mostly although it affects mostly older people, it's important to remember that it's not part of normal aging, which quite often is misguided, but quite often people will assume that that is the case. Just for your interest, and I think this is another way of kind of presenting what dementia may be, what it may be, not just for the person living with it, but also for their family member or carer. So that's a piece of poem that I picked up that I thought actually speak quite nicely of what a carer experience of dementia may be like. Probably read some of it until halfway through. I'm not going to read all of it, but I will be sharing the slide. And then if you want to read the whole thing, then you may also do it in your own space. So sometimes I am her mom, my aunt, and other family members. Sometimes just a friend with a name she can't quite remember. But now and again she returns for a while. She knows me and thanks me with that laugh and that smile. I can see the odd thread of the mom that I knew, the one in control, the one I went to. I can see that these moments are getting less as days go. What lies ahead for us, or is too scary to know. So this is just to kind of highlight again what dementia may means, and it's something that, depending on who we are and our own experience, may have different meanings. The type of dementia the person has. Dementia in some numbers, they are about 850,000. That may well be an underestimation, but that's the number we have. People living with dementia in the UK. 1 in 14 people over the age of 65 have dementia. And that number is set to reach or reach 1 million by 2025. In terms of dementia and ethnic minorities, it is estimated at the moment that there are about 25,000 PME in the UK living with dementia. With increased aging population, that number is set to rise quite significantly, more than on the average population. You can see here that that number is set to reach about 50,000 by 2026, and almost triple, if not more than triple, from that number by 2051. Right. So, what are sort of barriers that may affect people living here? And I'm here, obviously, I think generally, but also within the BME community. Stigma is quite a big thing in terms of perception of what people may think. So quite often they may comments here to see what is in the chat. So stigma is quite a common thread as an issue within the BME community. And it may be that, being diagnosed or the idea of having dementia suggests people may say that it means that person may be sort of mad. The lack of awareness, I think, is something that adds to that, understanding what dementia is and how it works and how it may impact on people's life. Language barriers is quite a big factor here. In many languages, you won't be able to translate dementia. Have a word to signify dementia. And in some languages, you may actually have a word that means that translates as that, but it may actually be not a very nice term. Obviously, other factors that may be more present within the BME community would be difficulty of getting diagnosis. It's quite a general issues, but I think for the BME it's even more of a challenge quite often because people will not be quick to go to seek help. Social deprivation, sort of lack of social construct around dementia itself are factors that will also play part in terms of barriers that may affect people living with dementia. When supporting someone with dementia, I like to sort of highlight these factors. We're not all the same. So the BME community is not all the same. You may have people who are Black from the African community or Caribbean community. You may have within an African community different beliefs and cultural beliefs and factors. So it's quite important to not sort of try and provide a service that think that everyone is the same in the way that we provide service and support them. We have different experience, I think that's, and also needs. The needs may vary depending on how old people are, sort of where they are, what support need they may have around them. Religion or faith is very important. So I think it's good to remember those factors when you're thinking about someone who's living with dementia, and that may determine what their experience may be or what their challenges may certainly be. And it's always important in that to think about how we engage, because that engagement you have with someone who perhaps is already diagnosed, perhaps has not been diagnosed, but you can see that have signs of potential signs of dementia, that first contact, that communication may be quite important how that goes may open the door for them in the journey of sort of support, but actually living and understanding what dementia may be can be very crucial. So I wonder whether we can kind of have a discussion. So if people have questions, I want to kind of pause here on this slide. And then we can kind of have a bit of a communication around sort of what your experience may be of supporting someone or a patient or carers of people with dementia. And then we can have a discussion. Is that okay? So, does everyone here sort of regularly support carers or people living with dementia?
I look after my mother. She has dementia.
Okay. And what would you say is your, sorry, what was your name?
I'm Dr. Hussein.
Oh, hi, Dr. Hussein.
Hi.
And what is your experience of looking after someone with dementia?
It's very, very, very difficult because each hour of the day, there is different level of awareness. And that changes. Sometimes she's really, really confused and doesn't know where she is and what she wants to do. And sometimes she's very bright and alert, and you can hold a conversation with her, and it's very frustrating because when she's confused, she's really confused, and she's very difficult to manage.
Could you give me an example of what you mean when you said that when she's confused?
Like, for example, she's been living with me for 2 years.
Yeah.
Suddenly, I find her dressed, standing by the door. I want to go to my house. And like, no matter how much you explain, this is your house, you've been living here for 2 years, this is your room, this is your toilet, this is your bathroom. No, I want to go to my house. And she just wants to open the door and runs.
Of course, yeah.
And sometimes she's very childish, like she hides things and she doesn't want to tell you things, and sometimes she's very well. You can talk to her and you can have a nice conversation.
So does she want to have a home somewhere else? Yes. Her
house is not here, is in Iraq.
Okay. Have you ever, so when she says that she wants to go to a home, if you actually ask her, if you actually take that conversation and that's what she wants to do, and you sort of explore.
Yeah, I do ask her, and I say, why you want to go home? What is wrong?
Yeah.
She most of the time when she's at this stage, she cannot say more than 2 words. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Of course, yeah.
She cannot explain why she is feeling this way or not feeling that way. It's very, very difficult for her to explain herself. What is making her to decide anything is she's not able to explain herself.
Right. And so have you ever kind of where you've said, okay, so we will go later, or sort of kind of not say this is your home, or you can't go anywhere.
It depends what is your situation yourself. So like sometimes my husband has time, he holds her hand and he goes for a walk with her, or the carer goes for a walk to the park for half an hour, and then she comes back and she's okay.
Okay.
Sometimes it's night time, and it's bedtime.
Yes.
And she wants to leave, and this becomes very, very difficult this conversation is not very conducive. And, yeah, it's not easy. It's not always easy to guide her or to speak to her or to make her understand, or you understand what she wants. It's very difficult. It's very difficult.
Yeah. I think I recently attended an event, something called the Joy of Dementia, and one of the things that they try and kind of promote is the idea that about how you stay with that person where they are and kind of see how you can work with where their imagination is, because dementia in itself can present an opportunity to explore other things within their life. So, and I wonder, and this is why I was asking you those questions about whether you kind of are supposed to just saying, this is your home, whether you explore the other side. So it's quite useful. And how for yourself as a
alert from software update.
A lot of
Sorry, how often?
Pardon?
You said how often?
No, I was just gonna say that for yourself, how do you look after your own well-being?
Oh well, I have my husband who's another doctor, and we talk to each other. Like I in my faith, I'm a Muslim. I pray a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And try and go in the park, walk as much as possible in the work and in the park and calm myself down. And she has a carer, so that gives me a bit of a break. Like when the carer is here, that gives me a bit of a break.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
And are you accessing any of the dementia services?
Well, in the very beginning, where the diagnosis started, we had a nurse who visited us and gave us some leaflets.
Yeah.
There isn't the problem. She doesn't speak other than Arabic, and okay. she is still keeping the culture of the Muslims. So she doesn't like mixing like men and women, and she like if we tried like the as Iraqi community. The different families with the same problem, we tried to create a venue where we can bring people together, like mothers and fathers, and they can talk to each other or bring them some service. It's very, very difficult because it's as an Iraqi community, we are very small, very recently, and we haven't got many venues. But the idea, like we are talking, the different families, we are talking to each other and trying to support and help each other.
Yeah.
I have an extended family, so if I need any help, they come and support me, really.
Yeah. Thanks for that. There is a question here from Indira, and she's asking if dementia is more prevalent in the ethnic minority.
In Iraq or in ethnic minority as a.
No, that question is not for you.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's a general question. It's to do with the UK. From what I can see, and actually looking at the dose number that I shared earlier, I wouldn't say that it's more prevalent in the minorities communities. However, what is certain is that the trend shows that the rise in numbers of people living with dementia within the minority communities within the next, say, 50 years, the rise in the minority community is a lot higher. So that is set to rise by about 7 to 8 fold over the next 50 years compared to sort of general population in the UK. So that will be significant in that sense. But at the moment, I wouldn't say it's more prevalent in but two things that I wanted to highlight, and the first one really today is about the communication elements of working with both people living with dementia, but also carers of people, because communication is very, very important. A lot of the time they may not necessarily remember everything that is said, but there are things that they will certainly remember. So it's quite important to think about how that conversation takes place, how you want to manage it, depending on what services you're providing or what role you are actually playing sort of for that person. And of course, for someone living with dementia, body language may be very important. They tend to pay attention to those. So just be aware that that will be very important. You know, probably need to listen carefully between, not just hear what they say, but also hear what they may be intending to say, sort of thing, or what they may not actually be saying. And I think that's very, very important. And of course, be patient, stay calm, can be very, very helpful for someone living with dementia. But actually, quite often for me, I would say from experience, for family member or the carers, supporting that person, being very patient and calm can be very, very helpful, because it can be a very, very stressful role for the carer who has to go through that journey with their loved one who's living with dementia. So it is significantly very important. Does anyone else needs to kind of share or talk about their sort of experience so that we can use it as a way of furthering conversation here about sort of dementia and the minority communities? No, it's all very quiet today. So another aspect of, obviously we know that dementia is a condition that will, it's an impairment that will affect people memory and capacity to remember. We also know that it's a progressive impairment. For that reason, it is often quite important to plan ahead and to support people living with dementia to plan ahead and support a sort of family member who may play a very vital role in that process. Planning ahead, maybe thinking about who will manage your affairs if you're no longer able to do it. Again, I think quite often within the BME community, these may be complex. So it may well be that in the BME community, it's not always going to be that sort of next of kin or carer who will be doing that sort of supporting that side of it. It may be another family member. So it's quite important to pay attention to that sort of how different within the BME community family unit may actually operate in that sort of sense. But nonetheless, people understanding that in this country, your wife, just because someone is your wife doesn't mean that they would suddenly be able to manage your affairs. If you're not able to do it, it's quite important to make sure that people understand that. Therefore, understanding what lasting power of attorney is and what role it plays and what it does is quite important as part of sort of helping someone living with dementia to think about planning ahead. Will writing is another one. Again, for someone, I work obviously in sort of an end of life, and quite often I will say that it is more likely within the BME community that you have people who will be so quite often advanced stage of, say, dementia, and they will not know, they will not have a will, but they will not also have things like lasting power of attorney or what lasting power of attorney is. Certainly more likely to be the case within the BME community than white or the general community as a whole. So it is very important that we are able to kind of bring about these conversations so that people can start thinking about these things in a way that is helpful for them, but also Again, wishes conversation can be quite useful as part of the planning. You're thinking about this early enough in the process. So the first opportunity to sort of have a diagnosis, which means that you can start this conversation, can be very, very useful. Oh, I'm not sure. I think people are reporting that there's a problem with the voice coming and going. Okay. I'm not sure why that is, but I will try and kind of speak a bit slower, and hopefully you will be able to get everything I'm saying. But if not, please just drop a question in there, and then I'll come back to it. I'm not sure why that's happening. Of technology. Long-term impact of dementia. I think it's quite important to think about this as part of future planning. Everyone will have their own experience. Some people with dementia may become more aggressive as they get their dementia condition advanced. Some people will need a lot more care. And that means that obviously you need to think about sort of preferred place of care. Can that person be looked after at home? What are your options? I think there are sort of conversations that we need to make sure that they happen, which in the BME community, and also actually quite often mentioned statutory services, there will be an assumption that family will take on that role. A lot of the time, is what will happen, but also sometimes for many families, that will not be an option that they would want to take. That will not be available. So it's important to make sure that we pay attention to that and support families sort of accordingly, depending on where things are. Of course, there is an impact of looking after someone with dementia on the care and their family. I think it's a challenge which was well described by Majida. Some of the challenges that you have, the emotional impact of looking after someone with dementia, the practical challenges of sort of accessing the right service, being able to support them effectively, but also sort of having your own support network or the lack of, that they will all have an impact on the carer. I will come to that. Some useful resources specifically to do with BME. So that there are reports that are quite useful. I will come back to you about the question around the sort of training to recommend. That's okay. I'll send that information to you. And that will be forwarded on. There are some training that you can access, but I will send you the sort of link in terms of accessing training. And I'm assuming that this is training for sort of supporting people with dementia. Is that right? So in terms of the support that you would normally have for people living with dementia, so apart from sort of your memory services in the local area, you may have found that the Alzheimer's Society quite useful. They have their helpline, support line. The Admiral Nurses helpline is also very useful. It's one that I use quite a lot. But in some area, you may also have a team, an admiral nurse team that will provide additional support quite often to the carer of someone living with dementia. Quite useful. Nubian Life in Hammersmith and Fulham also have support for BME, and it's a day center. So I think they can be quite useful in terms of when you're thinking about how you want to support the person living with dementia. I just added something here. The joy of dementia is something that I attended one of their sort of event recently. They're trying to have a very different way of looking at what dementia is and what that means for the person living with it and their family. It's quite interesting, but they're actually using sort of storytelling and improvisation as a tool to kind of explore dementia and what that is. But the link is there, so you can use that.
Sorry, Francis, the sound seemed to be cutting out here and there.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the problem is. I'm really sorry for that.
No problem. Not sure why I started with that. Might be the connection. Sorry.
Quite worried now about how much may have gone amiss of what I've been saying, really.
Yes, I was wondering if maybe it would be better. Would you mind trying to log in and out, or is that too much hassle? I wonder if that would fix the issue. If there is anything with the sound.
I can stop the sharing first and see whether that makes a difference. Okay. Does anyone have any questions or comments on what I've been talking about?
I try once to speak to dementia people because several times my mother went to the door, she tried to escape. So when I asked them, is there anything they can help me? Is there any advice? They immediately told me about the deprivation, the dolls, the deprivation of liberty. And I said, well, I'm not depriving her from her liberty. I'm protecting her from harming herself and, ending up somewhere where she will be abused or killed or something. Sometimes those people, they take the law to the letter. They don't have lateral thinking. But I still didn't get any help when I asked, is there anything to manage the door where other than locking the door, where my mother cannot escape from the house? And are there any toys or games or books or something where somebody can access to stimulate her brain better than what we are currently doing? I mean, now we are giving her coloring books and some Arabic words, alphabet. She look at the letter and she make a word, and very simple minuses and pluses. But are there anything that stimulate the brain and keep the functionality for longer?
There are various tools that I use. The Alzheimer's Society actual website has a lot about sort of suggestions and tools that you may use, and things that you may be able to that are recommended as used to stimulate people's brain as activities. Let's see whether I can get the link to the page. I will try and share the link to the page at some point. Angelina has actually added something on the website, on the chat, saying that there is something called a door sensor for your mum. She's wondering, so it may be a good idea to refer to social services for support. Is there any other questions? I think it's true to say that in terms of sort of looking at what you may do to support someone, particularly if you're a carer, there are options out there, but it's about finding out what may work for you and that person that you're looking after who's living with dementia. You need to factor in their sort of their interests and the practicality of what that option may be in terms of finding out what works. And of course, the truth is that what may work today may not necessarily work tomorrow or in a week's time. So there's always that element of sort of things will be changing. I don't want to keep talking. So I was hoping that I sort of thought that they will. I was hoping that we will have some discussion here in terms of what everyone else is doing.
Sorry, I guess, did you want to continue with your slides or?
Well, the slide was quite brief, so that was the slide. I had, obviously thought the idea was to try and generate some conversation around sort of support and what we.
I see. There was a comment about music. I don't know if you saw that.
What comments is that one?
Sergit said that they use music or.
I have seen all of the comments. That was just for stimulation of the brain. Somebody was asking the music is one part which most people like to listen to the music and that this is stimulation for the brain.
So I didn't quite get that what were you saying about the stimulation
somebody
of the
was
brain?
asking for the stimulation of the brain, and Dr.
Oh, yeah.
Hussain, yeah. And music is one thing that stimulates the brain. She can buy music tapes or records her mother likes, and then she can listen to those.
So I actually put a link in the chat where you can look at something that's been done by HUK around cognitive stimulation therapy. That will be a useful read.
That's great. I was wondering if anyone has got any other input or any other questions they would like to ask maybe. If you don't mind, I'm just gonna share a link in the chat.
Yeah.
It's a quick type form, and it's sort of a feedback for the session and sort of the details. So the participants can enter the details, and we can send any potential resources. So if everyone would mind filling in the forms, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, you put the link in the chat, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. The link is in the chat. Do you think, Francis, we can share maybe the slides or any resources you have afterwards?
I will forward it to you for sure. Is the audience mostly sort of Hammersmith and Fulham?
Yeah, it's mostly Hammersmith and Fulham, but I'm assuming there will be other attendees from Northwest London. I think it was shared.
Okay, yeah. I will forward the slide to Mandik.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Francis, for today. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. How often are you guys doing these sessions?
I think they are normally weekly, but this week we have 2 of these.
Okay.
So I guess if anyone, nobody has anything else to add or any questions, we
Yeah.
can conclude the meeting. As I said before you leave, if you don't mind filling in the type form, that would be very helpful. Thank you. Thank you, India. All right. Sorry, Francis, I don't want to keep you any longer if you need to go.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the session.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
करती हूँ उसमें स्पिनच में गार्लिक लहसुन अनियन